Hello and welcome back to OtakuDaiKun. Today's video is unscripted. I came across this interesting thread on Twitter, and it was asking about people's hot gaming takes, their unpopular opinions. I thought I'd just go over them and state my opinions and see if it'd make for an interesting discussion. Maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't. So yeah, a gaming opinion that has you like this, and it's from Tangled. So-called masculine and uglified women aren't even ugly. People will look at you dead in the eye and tell you that Tanya is ugly. You only get upset because certain influencers tell you to. Not liking it is one thing, but writing off an entire game? That's pure idiocy. I don't know. I think that all 4 women in this particular picture that you're referencing are pretty damn ugly to me. Then again, I just tend to think a lot of Western games just can't get human faces looking appealing. Like, it's just all Uncanny Valley stuff, whether you're talking like Mass Effect or whatnot. I think that has a very uncanny facial expression for most people too. Before the one that everyone hates. My face is tired. You know that one? And especially with Mary Jane, because there's no reason that game has to look the way it does, because it's top-tier production values, and they make these women who are supposed to be, Peter Parker's age, like college or something, look like they're in their 30s or 40s at least. Same with Resident Evil remake, The President's Daughter, and that Silent Hill one too. This one came from David Vink. Ultra realism and AAA budgets pretty much ruined gaming. Because of that, we have to wait 10 years for a new game in a franchise, when we used to get a new one every year. Companies can't experiment, innovate, or even try new IPs because one failure means the death of a studio. I think there's some things true and some things wrong here. I don't want there to be a new entry in a franchise every single year. That's why the Trails games and the East games become kinda hard to keep up with. East 10 Nordics came out, and now they're doing East 10 Proud Nordics. If they had just waited until all the content was ready, then we wouldn't have this problem. I'd much rather wait for a new Xenoblade game or something like that, even if it takes, another decade or whatnot. Because a good game is worth playing multiple times. A lot of times when there's a yearly release, then that game itself becomes kind of forgettable. That said, I do think games are getting way too expensive to make. What was that whole Concord situation? Where, whether you like the game or not, it's pretty crazy that a game that expensive to make needed a shit ton of players right at launch before it would succeed. And because it didn't meet that massive threshold of players, it got shut down real quick. All that work and development for nothing. If they just allowed it to release as a single game, not a live service one, then at least the people who did like it could still play it. Even a bad movie you can still buy on DVD or Blu-ray, that kind of thing. Even if 90% of the people in the world hate it, at least it's available for everyone else. Luckily, I don't care too much for realism in games, and nowadays I'm surprised what people complain about when it comes to graphics. Final Fantasy VII Remake, the second one, Rebirth, looks amazing to me, but people are like, oh, well the backgrounds aren't as optimized and stuff, and I'm like, really? You're looking at the wrong thing. Then again, my eyes are glued to Tifa's chest, but that's an important part of the graphics. The only reason y'all complain about MMR/skill-based matchmaking is because you don't want to play against sweaty people like yourself. You'd rather dunk on people who aren't as good as you to stroke your ego. This is weird because I don't play a lot of competitive games, and one of the reasons I don't is because I feel like the matchmaking is absolute shit. I'm always being placed with people who can just totally wipe the floor with my face. Whether it's a fighter, whether it's a shooter, none of it's fun for me when that happens. I don't know, I think they should improve the technology of matchmaking for skill-based stuff. Games are art, and art isn't always meant to be fun. Yes and no. I often see that as an attempt to get out of criticism. If you make a game that isn't fun to play, and your excuse is, well, it's art and that's why, it's fine. It's no, you just designed a really shitty game. And if we got to that point, I almost feel like you'd have to start putting on game cases or titles or whatever, some kind of disclaimer. This is one of those depression games, like Last of Us 2 or something. They're like, it's not meant to be fun. If a game that wants to go for that avenue wants to say that, then I'd be like, all right, fine, I won't play that game. I think in general you can probably cry artistic merit as just kind of a means to deflect criticism. Well, it was an artistic choice. I meant for it to be shitty like this. People who play just for fun shouldn't play competitive games and/or shouldn't play ranked games. Well, that's why they distinguish between ranked and non-ranked. I have absolutely no interest in playing ranked matches. But it's tricky because ranked is usually how you're supposed to find out how good you are and get proper matchmaking based on it. Even recreational players are gonna need to be ranked somehow. You might wind up with some gamers who are just really freaking good and should be in a ranked match, but they choose to play casually and it throws off the whole skill curve. There is no reason for games to launch at 100% volume. Excuse me? That sounds like a skill issue. Like, turn down your TV or something. It is kind of annoying when different platforms or different types of media run at different volume scales, though. Maybe this is a bigger issue when you're watching, like, on television or something. Like a lot of movies, they try to go for a very high dynamic range. That's usually why you can't hear what the fuck people are trying to say without turning it up, and then an explosion goes off and you got tinnitus. It's because they were designed for a theater experience, not your house. Video games at least know they're gonna be in your home, and so they tend to have a more compressed audio track. Oh, but you might be talking about PC and you're trying to like do a voice chat or something while you play. In which case, if you've opened that particular game before and you set it to like 50% volume, it might be nice for it to be at 50% the next time you open that same instance of the same game. That just seems like a really first world problem though. A brutally difficult game isn't fun. Honestly, I think it depends on you. Like, hard games tend to induce a lot of gamer rage, and I think a lot of gamer rage is very unhealthy. And this is coming from somebody who's had a lot of it growing up. I've reached a point where, yeah, if the game's not fun, why are you doing it? And try to pick games in general that, don't piss you off. And yeah, if you don't like really difficult games, then that's totally fine to just avoid them. Not everyone is supposed to be into these Souls-likes. And sometimes the reason a video game is brutally hard isn't because it's a proper challenge. Like instant death pitfalls and things are easy, cheap deaths that aren't really fun to experience. Even the Souls games that people bring up all the time, there is a proper time to dodge. There is a way to learn the enemy's patterns. It's not entirely unfair. Many of you don't like video games, you like interactive movies. You say that like that's a problem. It's like when people say that visual novels aren't games, and I'm like, I guess not really. You're not getting like reflexive action out of them, but the appeal is really, really similar. The way I feel is that if it's a cutscene, let it be a cutscene. If it's gameplay, let it be gameplay. There's a little bit of fun of blurring the line in between, but if like every time you're going through a gameplay section, but then you find out it's heavily scripted, like as you're climbing up a rock face, oh no, one of the rocks broke, I'm gonna fall, that kind of thing. To me, I always find that really cringe because that's not me, that's not the skill. Every player who encounters that is gonna fall for that same scripted little piece. I'd rather just watch that as a cutscene. Not every JRPG needs to be 100 hours long. A tight, emotional 25 to 30 hour story will always leave more impact than a bloated, open world full of fetch quests. Shorter doesn't mean less meaningful. I think the honest answer is a game needs to be as long as it makes sense for it to be. How much actual content are you enjoying and how much of it was padded? Because yeah, there's a lot of padding. Even my favorites, like Xenoblade, 90% of the side quests, I do not give a rat's ass about what the NPCs are going through. It's not the most clever, fun, or witty writing by any means, and it's certainly not relevant to the main story that I'm invested in. I just wind up skipping 90% of that dialogue and then just grabbing whatever item they need and shoving it in their face for completion. One of my favorite JRPGs is Parasite Eve, and that one's really short. That or some of the older Ys games like Oath and Felghana. I'd rather play a shorter game multiple times than a really boring long one. So yeah, when it comes to JRPGs, I think having a proper level of grind, so it's not like too ridiculous. You won't fight the exact same enemy encounter like 40 times over when it would have been fine to do just like 5. And then when it comes to the writing, try not to be overly bloated with dialogue. I'm talking to you, Fate Grand Order. Stop locking your video games in plastic coffins and having them graded. Play them. Yeah, I don't think this is a very hot take. Like, the whole gaming collection thing is kind of strange. I mean, it depends. If it's a game you've already played long ago and you just want to preserve it and you love it, so that when you do want to play it again, it's ready for you, that's great. I do think the whole auctioning of used games has gotten really stupid, though. Here's another one. Microtransactions, paid DLCs, and online-only live service games were a mistake. I don't think this is necessarily a hot take because a lot of people agree with this already. The only kind of DLC I appreciate is when it was stuff that the developers did not have to put in this game. Extra stuff like extra costumes or other things like that, and you can just buy it outright if you want. As long as they don't get too greedy about the prices, I don't really worry about that so much. But if I'm gonna fork out money for a game, and then I find out that game's gonna shut down when the servers shut down, well, that's my problem. And that's what makes live service games annoying. That, and you have to kind of play them on their schedule, not your own. I want to play a game when I want to, when I have free time. Stamina for sprint in a massive open-world single-player game isn't immersive, it's fucking annoying. Yeah, I think I pretty much agree with this, namely after playing Xenoblade Chronicles X and realizing you can do anything. You can sprint super fast, jump super high, there's no fall damage, all of that I appreciate. And then I look at Breath of the Wild and I'm like, oh, that looks like such a bitch. Video games shouldn't require a subscription service when you already pay for the internet provider. That's why I play on PC. Yeah, I agree here too. I don't think this is a hot take by any means, mainly because people don't want to pay for that. It just sucks knowing that there's a free alternative on PC, that if you buy the game there you can play online, no problems whatsoever, but if you go on console you have to pay Nintendo or Sony or Xbox. You could argue they have better service or are paying for some kind of server space for you, but when PC plays just fine, then you don't really get much out of it. It doesn't make sense that melee weapons deal more damage than guns. I mean, yeah, in real life, that's absolutely true. I'm pretty sure a bullet wound is gonna be faster and penetrate harder than any weapon's stab wound, like a sword or something. But unfortunately, that's not nearly as much fun. You know, video games are fantasies, so you want to allow for that fantasy to play out. It can't always be like Indiana Jones, where this guy comes swinging out a blade and then Indy just goes, shoot him. Done. But yeah, none of that's like efficient necessarily. There is no video game that proves you're a good gamer because you beat it. Games are designed to be beaten, and if a majority of people fail to do so, then it's a bad game. Actually, yeah, kinda. I definitely feel this way about like tests in school. Like if the teacher's proud that nobody passes their test, then I'm like, dude, you wrote a shitty test or you just failed miserably at teaching people the contents of that exam. Same kind of thing for a video game. Like, back in the day, there was motivation to make games brutally hard because you put in coins every time you failed. Or if it was at a rental store, they wanted to make sure you could rent the game multiple times before being able to beat it, so they made it really, really hard. That just doesn't have as much value these days. If anything, if people keep playing an older game over and over and over instead of all the new stuff, then you're losing money. You might want gamers to just chug through that content at light speed so they're ready for next product. Overall though, different games have different appeals to different people. So if there's a niche that really likes the brutally hard game and hardly anyone else can beat it, well, you're making that community happy at least. A horror game that takes place at night doesn't need to be so damn dark to be scary. I mean, I guess so. I'm trying to think of like a really fun horror game that's set in like bright daylight. I do think there's something about nighttime and dark aesthetics that does make things inherently creepier. That said, I've seen video games that are sometimes so dark you can't see jack shit and the game becomes unplayable. Sometimes that's because you need to like turn up the contrast or brightness on your TV though. I don't know if they actually designed it that way. I think people should be allowed to play how they want to play, like a keep inventory function in Minecraft, because why the fuck would I spend 4 hours on something, only for a green fuck to incinerate me and my items? Yeah, that checks out too. Sometimes losing your items or losing progress hurts way more than the failure itself. It's just sort of like, fine, if you're gonna be like that, I quit. Fuck that shit. No way. Though if that's the issue, why don't you just turn off the green fucks that are incinerating you? Options are better than not, I can agree with that. Having your ability to dodge attacks tied to a character stat is almost never a fun game mechanic. Nothing feels worse than stacking a dodge stat and then being hit regardless 4 times in a row because of bad RNG and dying. I mean, I guess so. This is more of a question of just RNG in general and how that can ruin a fun gaming experience. It's like, I did the thing that so many other players did, except I die while they succeeded. Why is that fair? Well, because it's lucky. What comes to mind for me is like Fire Emblem games. If you're going in to attack an enemy, like a boss, you want to make sure that your attacks hit and, if possible, dodge theirs. Let's say you get really shit RNG and the boss instant kills you. 90% of the time, my instinct is to just say, fuck that, and reload a save or something, or go back in time or whatever. Like, I don't feel like a more skilled gamer for being just like, well shit, I lost, let me die and retry the whole mission all over again because of it. I'd be like, no, I was gonna win that mission if that stupid RNG didn't screw me as bad as it did. I'm gonna redo that one part. That said, when I look at this description of the dodge skill they're referring to, one of my biggest pet peeves in gaming is having really shitty descriptions of what's actually happening to your characters. Just reading, if dodge and dodge plus are both present, dodge plus tokens will be consumed first. It's sort of like, you're overly complicating this, damn it. Make it intuitive. Most games with RPG mechanics, experience leveling, talent trees, etc., could remove them and they'd be way better games. Most games just put them in as arbitrary complexity to give the illusion of depth. I don't know. The benefit of an internal EXP system is character-based growth. We know almost all of us as players could just get good by playing the game over and over and over. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, maybe we just suck. But one of the appeals of RPGs is that it has nothing to do necessarily with your skill level. There's an aspect of the game that is based on how much work you put in, and you will get that reward. Your character will grow stronger, even if you, the player, still suck. And to that end, I actually really like RPG mechanics. Graphical fidelity is severely overrated, and it's led to games becoming more shallow overall. Depends on what you mean by graphical fidelity. If we're talking graphical detail, then you might be onto something. Not every game needs shit tons of layers of ray-traced lighting and all that dynamic shit. Sometimes a game could look way the hell better by going for a more simple art style. No, what fidelity means to me is things like resolution, frame rate, anti-aliasing, things that'll pretty much improve every type of game. It's like playing any game from like the standard definition generation on an emulator in HD. It immediately looks better. It's the same details, the same pokey polygonal models, but rather than all this stair-stepping, you get nice clean lines. So I think what they mean to say is that games needing to be immersively detailed and realistic make the game more shallow. The example that comes to mind for me is Final Fantasy XV. I'm not a huge fan of that game, simply because it's not nearly as epic as other Final Fantasies, and I think part of that is because they spent a really long time making things like eggs on a plate jiggle for the full food section, when that probably could have been better spent designing more dungeons and more actual content, maybe fleshing out the story, which is ass. The complacency of the Sonic fandom leading Sonic Team into making increasingly more half-baked games for an increasingly higher price as the fans continue to refuse to criticize or draw any sort of line for what a good game is has me genuinely acting like this. Except I think the Sonic racing games are pretty damn good. If I have any complaint about the latest one, it's that there aren't as many racers as there were in the previous game. To me, that's just less content and they found a way to reskin it and sell it back to you for a higher price. There are some people who like the new stuff, there are people who want the old stuff, and I don't know if they can ever, meet eye to eye. So Sega just looks at it and what do you actually want? We don't know. Not every game is for everybody. Some games are just not for you, and that's okay. Yeah, that's not a hot take, or it shouldn't be. Unfortunately, this whole, I need to feel included in every game kind of mentality has sort of lost the point of this. The only time I think it's okay to finagle a little bit is when somebody knows they could really enjoy this type of game if it had an easier difficulty setting or something like that. As long as it's an option, I don't think it's a bad idea. The second I see Souls-like, my interest in the game is gone. I just think it's overly saturated at the moment. Somewhere along the way, action games have moved from a combo-oriented system to a boss-centric mechanic where you have to watch the enemy, learn their patterns, and dodge them, because your individual attacks aren't going to delay what they're gonna do to you. Both systems have their merits, and it's hard for them to reconcile, but just like superhero fatigue or any of that other stuff that's just overly done right now, I hope there's a point where Souls games will just have their own appeal and they won't be the hottest thing ever and people won't get turned off by it anymore. Maybe a decade from now, things will settle down. While anti-consumer practices are rampant, people are like, ooh, fighting games used to have unlockable characters. Now they just sell them as DLC. Seasons and DLC didn't replace unlockable characters. They replaced releasing multiple versions, which people also bitched about. Yeah, I get this, they did do that a lot for fighting games throughout the day. Then again, I feel like the differences between the various releases of Street Fighter 2, for instance, like 2 Turbo and all that other stuff, added a whole lot more than just like another character here or there. What really pisses me off is when fighting games go to a whole new generation. So we've moved to a point where a fighting game can add characters as DLC. That's cool, I guess. But what happens when the sequel rolls around, and all those characters that were DLC before aren't even included now? What if the new game has even fewer people in the base roster? To me, that just seems lazy as shit. I know you're rebuilding the engine and the graphics from scratch, but the whole point of a fighting game is having main characters that you really love, and wanting to see them return in future installments. It seems really petty to me to like get excited that they announced Ryu for Street Fighter. I'm like, dude, Ryu's the main character, why would you put him aside? Or like how Street Fighter 6 still doesn't have Sakura. You'd think she's a staple by now. So I guess I don't care if it's necessarily DLC or a new version of the same product, as long as all the characters just continue to grow rather than decrease over generations. If some of the highest rated games were to be released today, those same players bouncing on them would call them woke. I don't agree with this at all. This is the whole bygone era thing that they pulled with Stellar Blade. What we call woke about a video game tends to be all the things we're not allowed to do anymore. Things we're not allowed to have, like Lara Croft can't be a Tomb Raider anymore. She can't be stealing the artifacts of indigenous peoples or whatever the hell. Or that women can't be attractive in games anymore because it's objectifying, blah blah blah. It's like how Anita Sarkeesian said she cared about video games, complained all about things like damsels in distress, and now we can't have things in games like that anymore because people are afraid of that criticism. A game should be designed with a specific audience in mind. When you try to design a game for everyone, you lose focus on what the game is actually supposed to be. Yep, it's true. Sometimes what makes a property really unique are the things that other people don't like about it, but other people really do. If you want to market a game for a global audience or for the modern audiences or whatever the hell, it means buffering out all the harsh edges that give it character. Customizing genders, body types, and clothing should be the norm and have no restrictions. It depends on if it's a story-based game, like if the protagonist has a very distinct personality and character arc that isn't necessarily you or a representation of you. But yeah, if there is character customization, the more options the better, every time. If people use fast travel in gaming a lot, it means that world isn't fun to traverse. Yeah, that one's tricky. I guess it's like asking in real life, how many times do you want to take the scenic route before you get sick of it? It might look beautiful, but sometimes you just need to get there and do a thing. Sometimes an area is fun to explore at first, like a Fog of War type deal where you're uncovering bits of the map as you go, but then after you've put in that hard work, after you've understood the topography and all that, it helps to be able to have checkpoints. When it comes to quests, though, and all it is just warping between different places, fetching items, killing specific enemies arbitrarily, then it can become kind of a chore really fast, and you have to try to add meaning to it. Skins like this ruin FPS games. Why? I guess maybe if it's a competitive thing? Like, damn it, we keep losing because our team member insists on using Beavis and everyone can see his hair over the cover. PlayStation Platinums shouldn't require online/multiplayer trophies. For a single-player game, I definitely agree, but sometimes you can't help it, can you? Like, what trophies are you gonna put in Overwatch that have nothing to do with the online feature? But yeah, if it's a game with a total single-player campaign, like a fighter or something like that, has a story mode and all that, and then they're like, oh, but you need to win 20 matches in online mode in order to get this trophy, I could see that being really annoying. Nintendo fans will tolerate anything scummy that Nintendo does due to being nostalgia blind. I don't even know if it's nostalgia blind, but Nintendo does have this weird way of worming its way in. Right now, they've become the enemy of the gaming world. They'll pursue you over copyright for fan-made projects, they'll raise the price of gaming and give you shitty features on shitty hardware, and they'll threaten to brick your console if you don't use it the way they want you to. And don't even get me started on the censorship. Fuck graphics, give me compelling gameplay and story. Yes and no. Graphics, quote-unquote, is a combination of art style and fidelity and detail and all that stuff put together. Sometimes the compelling art style helps make the story more expressive, like a game that has the ability to do cinematic camera angles and things. It's like when people act like gameplay is somehow independent from the art style too. Because there are like a million different Western trashy games I have no interest in, but if they gave all of those games an anime-style makeover, then I'd be totally interested. It's the same gameplay, but it really isn't because the character you're playing as is important. People need to stop pitting turn-based RPGs and action-based RPGs against each other and just enjoy both for what they are. They're enriching in their own ways and shouldn't always be compared. Yeah, pretty much. I think a lot of developers feel that making it action-oriented is an easier route, because if you go with turn-based, then you have to find some innovative new hook or twist. Then again, the entire battle system of the last 3 Persona games have been almost identical. Never really seemed to hurt them there. Auto-recharging shields and health are bullshit, and generally should not be included in games. They remove a huge element of what invests a player, killing tension and pacing as players hide behind a wall for a bit every 30 seconds, just turning it into a dragging slog. Honestly, this is one of those cases where I think there's merit to each. The whole regenerating health bar/shield thing was implemented in Halo, I think, and their motivation for using that system was that they'd have more control over the player whenever they encounter a new situation. The developers would know roughly how much health you'd have at any given point, aka a full health bar, and that would allow them to focus on making every single individual moment impactful in a shooter, rather than try to design a level that can be played out through endurance. At the same time, health gathering and stuff is something that makes those old shooters pretty fun. With a lot of old school JRPGs, MP was a huge cost. The entire success of a dungeon would come about being frugal, whereas the Tales series and a lot of other more modern RPGs use cooldowns, which I kinda like better overall, honestly. Namely because it imposes an idea of use it or lose it. If you've got all these really cool attacks and you're too afraid to use them because you don't know when the boss is, then you just wind up using the most boring attacks every single time because it's more conservative. There are gachas that you can find enjoyment in despite them being gachas. Every game would be better if it were not gacha, but it being gacha doesn't automatically make it a bad game. I mean, yeah, no, I agree with this. I think every single game that has gacha would be more fun without it, giving you some other opportunity to obtain that character. The only problem is that gacha tends to make things seem more dramatic, like when people live stream their expensive rolls and whatnot. The surprise mechanics give things an interesting twist. Achievements/trophies ruin the extra secrets/cheat codes/modes you would get in a game after unlocking certain requirements, and instead of giving you something cool, you merely get a Pavlovian dog response to a checklist. I mean, yeah, if you're gonna reward players with secrets and stuff, do it in-game. Even if you're gonna use trophies, they should only reinforce a reward system that's already in the game itself. Like the recent Shantae I just played. Beat the game with 100% completion, and you get a nice swimsuit. You can praise a game while still discussing any faults you have with it, just like you can say a game is shit while appreciating aspects of it. The fact that so many people see video game discussion as only 2 camps, haters and glazers, has ruined all nuance of media discourse. For that, you can blame Anita Sarkeesian. She went on and on about how it was okay to criticize something you like, but the subtext was always there. The things we criticize need to change. They've gotta go. So if the thing that you're criticizing is someone else's favorite thing about a game, then who should the devs listen to? We can't help but see certain criticisms as a threat, because our favorite games really have changed because of that criticism. I like weapon durability in games. It's like a type of resource management, and you people typically love those things when it comes to ranged weapons, so I don't get why it's hated when it comes to melee weapons. It's the same thing, just in different clothing. Not quite. I mean, if you run out of bullets, the gun isn't totally worthless. You can get more bullets. Your sword breaking means you can't use it again, and weapons in RPG-type games tend to be a lot more important than that. Like for you, it's not just about having a good weapon, it's about getting the best weapon, the ultimate weapon, in any given RPG. So the idea of the ultimate weapon or something being something capable of breaking? Yeah, that just doesn't fly. It's a different psychology. Not saying games can't have breakable armor and weapons and such, but if they're gonna do that, I think they should foster a system where you're not as invested in any particular gear. Like you should just be used to wearing whatever you find around. Character and weapon cosmetics in premium games should be earned from playing the game, not by throwing more money at it. This one's a little tricky. Like, at least for JRPGs, when a game comes out, there's usually a set design for each of the characters and their outfits. Back in the old days before DLC, we wouldn't really have a lot of unlockable outfits. The developers just didn't have any incentive to put them in there. We already designed a good character, why would you need another one? Well, some people want this character design, but in a bikini, or in a maid outfit, or God knows what they want. And so going through the extra effort of putting those additional things in there that aren't required, but definitely improve the experience, that could justify a little extra price to me. At the very least, I'm willing to pay it for that little extra, because I'm also understanding that previous games did not have such features. Men deserve better clothing options in games when you're allowed to have character creation. There should be an option for less clothes that isn't just boxers. I don't know if this is really that much of a hot take, but I do agree with it. Most male designs to me are just boring, but even for people who really like the male physique, more options is better than fewer. As a man in the real world, I hate men's fashion too. It's all about just how expensive of a suit you can put on. There's not a lot of creativity in the colors and styles or any of that shit, which is why t-shirts are probably the most expressive thing I can wear. I think the thing to push that through would definitely be like the gay person's gaze or the female gaze. People who actually know what they want out of the various skimpy men's outfits, because a lot of the developers might not. They know what they want to see a girl dressed in, but not necessarily for guys. We need more horny women getting in on the conversation. Games that require you to dedicate your life to it in order to be good at it should not be mainstream. Why do I have to explore, craft, design, earn, and arrange every single thing my character holds? It caters more to the kids in basements without real responsibilities. I don't necessarily agree with this. I like games that are very, very complex, that provide a really good, immersive sense of escapism, because at least these games are designed to be won. They're designed to be fun. Real life? Not so much. Your daily grind at your job can just be miserable. Maybe it's not that you don't like working hard, it's just that you don't feel really rewarded for the hard work you're putting in. But in a video game, you actually feel that reward. And so you want it to be immersive, you don't mind grinding and learning about it, because you're actually getting rewarded for your effort. Turning a bonfire, rest area, save point into an enemy to get the player is dog shit game design. It wasn't good when Final Fantasy XII did it, and it's not good anywhere else either. You mean kinda like Mimics, where you're trolling your players? I don't know, it can be fun in moderation. Maybe not for a rest area though. Like, it's just not good psychology to raise your players to be weary or afraid of a save point. Like, those should just be symbols in games that were like, oh, thank God, especially if you need to save really quick because you gotta be somewhere. So yeah, don't fuck with our save points. Between being priced out of it and being bullied out of it, kids 10 years from now aren't gonna give a damn about video games. They're gonna see it as old people shit. This I don't agree to. The kinds of games that young people are gonna be playing are drastically different. The whole Minecraft, Fortnite generation really isn't gonna understand a lot of the stuff that we love out of, I don't know, what you think is popular. AAA, mainstream action games, I don't know. The future of JRPGs for future generations? That I'm not sure of either. I don't know what the young kids play. I mean, Pokemon's still kind of popular, right? Enemy scaling based on your level is one of the worst mechanics in gaming. It completely removes the sense of progression. I wouldn't mind this being done a little bit in certain games, as long as there was still a reward for it, like being able to go back to an old dungeon or something and the enemies aren't a total pushover. If you're willing to make those enemies still drop decent experience or money or something, then I wouldn't mind them being a little bit stronger than they were before. But yeah, if they're constantly matching you every step of the way, then leveling up means nothing. It completely negates that. If anything, it actually makes the game harder, like Final Fantasy VIII, where you're motivated to just not level up as much as possible. There shouldn't be censorship in video games, and if someone feels uncomfortable with a game having heavy nudity, violence, or anything like that, the game isn't for them. Absolutely. Let fiction be fiction. Esports sucked all the joy from competitive gaming. I mean, it's an interesting concept, really. When you think of competitive gaming, you think of yourself being competitive with other people. But esports is all the people who are that much better than you going and competing with each other. Like, I just don't feel a part of it. Maybe I just don't watch enough esports stuff. It just feels like a whole other avenue of gaming I don't care about, which is why it sucks when certain things like censorship occur because they're trying to appease the esports crowd, like gaining sponsors and all that crap. Like, we can't put the Dead or Alive girls in this game anymore, or they have to be all covered up now. It's like nobody playing the game online with each other gave a shit, but these esports sponsors sure do. And in that regard, yeah, I do think esports has really screwed things over. That, and it's completely killed the idea of having a video game be single player. Granblue Fantasy Versus was fantastic for its single-player content, but when they did Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising, they chopped out all that single-player content to make it online and competitive all the time. It's not even just another option, they just nuked all the good stuff from the original game. Battletoads wasn't hard, you just suck at it. No, absolutely not. Battletoads is hard as fuck. And so were tons of other games of that generation. Like, that's where true difficulty in gaming comes from. And not necessarily the fun kind. Like I said, at least Dark Souls is designed to be hard, but like in a fair way, kind of. But no, old games didn't hold back. They gave you no room for error and huge punishments. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are not good Zelda games. They're good game designs in general, but not good Zelda games. You know, I can understand this. It's like when the Sonic games went for the Sonic Adventure title. A lot of people didn't like Sonic Adventure, but they loved the old Sonic games. A lot of people love Adventure and don't care for the old ones, so it's really just a whole different type of game in and of itself. And it would be a shame if Nintendo stopped making more traditional Zelda games because of Breath of the Wild's success. The fact that you still need keys to open doors when you can blow them up with your bazooka or shotgun shouldn't exist today. You could say the same thing for like knee-high walls and fences, or like jail cells where your character could clearly just slip right on through the bars. I guess basically if you're gonna put obstacles in a game, and you've got really powerful characters, you need to make sure those obstacles actually make sense for the context of the world. Like if you have a sword that can slay the heart of a dragon, that can pierce its iron coat, and yet somehow you can't get through a rusty lock on a chest? Every game should have a pause feature for single-player modes. I don't think that's a hot take. People have lives. We need to take breaks. Whether it's to go get some food, go to the bathroom, or your parents screaming, "Take out the trash!" Streamers kill the game. They ruin the experience for general people. This I don't agree with because you don't have to watch streamers. Like what? Like there was a time when you just stay off the internet and you just played the game when it came out. Then again, trying to avoid spoilers can be a bitch, if that's what you're talking about. Because even before the game comes out, somebody's beaten it and they've already wrote a huge review about it. Game devs used to make worlds you could get lost in. Now they make worlds that make sure you log in, and that's not the same thing. Yep, that's the live service problem in a nutshell. I don't want my games telling me when I can and can't play them. I play the games, not the other way around. And that means I should do it on my schedule. The size of the map is meaningless if there's nothing to do in it. We recreated New York City. Cool, so can I go into any building, store, etc.? No, that's crazy. Then just build a smaller map with stuff I can do. That's a tricky one, and I think of that from a JRPG perspective. Like, how do you represent size? Some JRPGs have you scaling the entire planet, but of course they make that part easier by using an overworld or something. I think that makes sense. If there's not actually a lot to do between one town and dungeon or the next, then yeah, just run across it real quick. If you try to build everything to scale, then you get a game like Final Fantasy XV, where it is a lot of stuff to explore, don't get me wrong, but instead of it being different towns and things you'd find across the globe, it's a bunch of gas stations and rest stops, making the entire game's map feel like the distance between like 2 towns in a game like Final Fantasy VII. One pirated copy doesn't mean -1 legit sale. It's a bit more complicated, especially when games no longer have demos like before. Yeah, for some, piracy is just an option. I'm either gonna pirate your game or not play it at all. Nowhere in my options was I ever going to cave and pay money. If anything, I like the game so much that I'll have to spend some money if I want to keep it, because it's good enough to own. It's bad that all characters are accessible. Games lose a ton of uniqueness and personality when every character is easy enough for anyone to pick up, or are all-rounder types that only have slightly different weaknesses, instead of playing more into one strength. This I don't necessarily agree with. I think there could be very difficult play styles, but I can't stand how fighting games handle this. For example, charge characters are inherently difficult for me to learn. I don't like it, which means that Chun-Li is pretty much walled off for me as a player. I'd love to be able to do like hooks and Hadokens with her, but she's just not that kind of character. I'd love the ability to swap out movesets from one character design to the next. Or like in Nike Goddess of Victory. I don't like playing the sniper rifles as much, but 3 of my favorite characters in that game are all sniper rifles and there's nothing I can do about it. Metroid Other M was fun. Hell yeah, it was. There was a lot of great things about that game. The graphics were phenomenal, the visuals, the gameplay, all of that was fun. People just didn't like the story. I would love to see someone give the Other M concept a better shot with a better controller and not such a cringy narrative, but still allow Samus to look amazing in her Zero suit and all those high-end graphics, and try to have a middle ground between Metroid Prime and the 2D stuff. Don't know why people burn through a game as soon as it releases. Game's been out for 1 week, and you complete it in 3 sessions like your life depended on it. What can you remember? Did you only care about the gameplay? Then they're stuck waiting years for the next one. Yeah, I don't know. Some of this is content creator problems. Like, you gotta get out there, you gotta be the first to have a hot take on it or something. You gotta be the first to drop a review. There's always someone better than you. There's always someone with an advanced copy somewhere. A lot of this is just generated by FOMO. So I really appreciate people when they can stop, take a breather, play the game at their own pace. It's just really hard when there's other pressures, especially if you've gotten into a race with a friend to see who can beat a game first. It's like every day we'd meet each other at school and I'd be like, I reached this part of the game. Did you get that far? No? Haha. You know, it was this petty thing. The dodge/parry mechanic in Expedition 33 wasn't that fun. Yeah, there's an interesting discussion going on regarding parrying in video games. On one hand, it's a very satisfying mechanic. The enemy's about to attack you and you're like, nuh-uh, I blocked it, screw you. You know, and I can appreciate that, it's a lot of fun. For a single-player RPG, though, some people actually want it to be turn-based, like truly turn-based. They don't want to have to learn reflexes and timing. I'm sure it worked out for this particular game, but that doesn't mean I'd want to see it in every game. Online gaming demolished the couch co-op where friends/family would come over and play on the same TV. I don't know, I think couch co-op is something they could definitely bring back, but no one feels motivated to do it, because you're putting in extra development to sell fewer copies, really. If everyone wanting to play had to own their own copy of the game, then that's better for their bottom line. Smash Bros. Ultimate is the worst game in the whole series. Yeah, no, fuck off. Smash Ultimate is the best because it has all the characters and the most content by a long shot. 1080p at 60Hz is all the resolution anyone needs. Anything above that is a waste of money. Well, anyone who says that has never played Final Fantasy VII Remake in 4K. Yeah, not all games need to be that, but it sure looks good when it is. We don't need new consoles anymore. We need new games. We don't need graphics to be better anymore. Probably peaked at 8th gen, and I can get behind the idea of installments in only one console forever. Tekken 20 on PS3, and instead of elevated hardware, we just get new content. I do not agree. I do not agree. We're getting closer to that precipice, but we still keep innovating on consoles that make older games way more fun to play on new hardware. PS3 looks like ass. A lot of the games on it were either interlaced or 720p. A lot of the games from that generation had horrible bloom lighting. However, I do think that they're starting to push out consoles faster than they are new generations of game. Every new console generation should have a new version of each of its respective games, like a new Grand Theft Auto, a new Zelda, a new Mario Kart, any of that kind of stuff. And each of those should take full advantage of the hardware available to them. Super Mario 64 should be appreciated for how groundbreaking it was at the time of its launch, but it's aged so poorly that it's not really worth playing. Tell that to all the speedrunners. I feel like personally, this game could be done with a remake really well. The same overall game, the same overall physics, just better controls and more quality of life features. Then again, for those speedrunners, all the ridiculous bugs and glitches are what make the game fun for them. Good games are designed to end. All live service games are condemned to mediocrity. I mean, kinda. If you have no end in sight, trying to balance them, especially in an RPG, becomes stupid. The number of times I've gotten all my gacha characters up to max level, and then wondered, well, now what do I do? When you get a new character, all you can really do is level them up to max 2. And if you want to actually use them at new game content, you have to make sure they're as strong as everybody else you already had. It's just a pain in the ass. I love it when you get the final weapon in a game, the best armor, the best weapon, you know it is, and you beat the super boss, the hardest thing in the game, then you move on to a new game. If you don't enjoy the game while you're grinding, you won't enjoy it when you finally get what you grinded for. That's kind of philosophical, really. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. But yeah, a game's grinding can be fun, and if you're not enjoying that process, then yeah, something's wrong. The video game industry is regressing despite the progression of technology. 15 years ago, we used to get banger games back to back. Now companies take a decade to make a garbage-ass game that dies in a month, after they milk your money, of course. I don't agree with this, not at all. The hindsight is always 2020. You're ignoring all the shitty games that came out back then. It was just the Wild West. So many games were out there, and we didn't necessarily know which ones were like the AAA games you needed to play. The quirky little JRPGs were sold right alongside all the FPSs and sports games, and they were all just games. Nobody understood that there was a AAA industry, and now that there is, a lot of that innovation comes straight from the indie scene. So nah, you just gotta keep your eyes peeled. I can't tell the difference between 30 FPS and 60. I don't know why it matters to some of you if the game runs at 30 or 60. They're basically the same. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. I don't know why you can't see the difference, but for a lot of people you totally can. The quality of motion, whether or not fast amounts of movement make you dizzy or not, FPS can improve all of that. Procedurally generated stuff is just developers being lazy. I don't know, certain dungeon crawlers make that kind of fun. There's definitely a therapeutic quality to the dungeons in Persona 3 and 4. Female protagonists don't have to be conventionally pretty or sexy to be appealing. I love drop-dead gorgeous broads just as much as the next gooner, but I also think they can be just cool or badass. Well, it depends on what you consider badass. Some people think that Kratos in God of War looks badass. I think he's ugly. Dude needs some hair and a very different attitude. Maybe you think someone looks cool, like Dante in Devil May Cry. Well, the female equivalent of that might be Velvet from Tales of Berseria. I can't remember the last time I wanted to play a game with an ugly dude, and the same would apply to the chicks. I just don't want to see it either way. Even some of my favorite childhood games like Mario, I'd love those a hell of a lot more if it were like Shantae but had the same controls as Mario. Dude, that would be awesome. $80 for a game you'll put 50 hours into is not expensive. I mean, there are definitely way more expensive hobbies out there for sure. I like to think of it like movies. If a 90-minute film costs like $15 at the theater, then you're paying like $5 an hour for entertainment. Video games tend to run cheaper than that because you play them for so much longer, but if you think of that logic in its entirety, then people will start padding out games with useless crap just to justify their price. Every game should have a wiki that is updated by the studio itself and not be a fan-made project. I mean, that would be helpful as fuck for any games with lore. I like the idea, I just don't think it's ever gonna happen. Fighting games aren't more difficult to learn than any other genre. I absolutely disagree. It can be very fun once you get past that initial hurdle, but some games are just naturally intuitive, and doing like a double hook forward just doesn't make sense to some people. Pokemon's newer games look fine. They look okay. Problem is, Game Freak is one of the most profitable studios ever, and you don't actually see that money being invested into the quality of the games themselves. They're almost always outdone by games a generation earlier. At the very least, if the games are gonna look subpar, they should have the entire Pokédex. So yeah, those are a lot of the different takes that I found in this thread. I tend to agree with a lot of them, but I also think there's a lot more nuance in there than Twitter can allow for. What do you guys think of all this? Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments below. And until next time, celebrate your fandom! I want to give a special shout out to all my $10 and up supporters. Video Gamer 75, Dante Pendragon, Mystic Samurai 1983, Steven Elak, Otaku Mom, Freebrick, Alexis Yukio Gomez Yamato, Lunar Works, Link Pendrago, Observer Bellis, James Hewitt, Uncanny EXP, Crow Calum, Sal Soto, Tristan Riggin, Major, Matao Mataru, Winter's Edge, Sneer Cachette, Sunbro Torian, Foxbox, Caitlin P, Sith Lord 906, Vladimirovna, The Taz 96, Kengo X 77, Alistair Bernadotte, and Reason 99. Thank you all so much.